Let's hop in. I'm looking forward to getting into it. So again, thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So let's begin our journey with. I always start with this question. 6 years ago, this pandemic changed so much about our world and our lives. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you approach life and work today?
Wow, the pandemic almost changed my life in many ways. I had been transitioning from the cannabis industry where I was producing events, and I have a deep, deep history in that world. And I was producing these events, and then I was kind of at the end of that journey where now we had laws and rules and permits and all these things that we never had before. And I was lost for, let's say, 5 years or so after that time, where I was just kind of doing odd jobs and trying to figure out stuff. But I had started a documentary at that journey of the production of these events. And I was working real hard to get this thing made into a documentary. And right before COVID, we kind of completed it essentially.
Yeah.
And then I was trying to get it picked up somewhere, and it was really difficult. And eventually, I met the right people, and we got the ball rolling on documentaries. And it was just right in time for everyone to be stuck at home and have to watch them.
Yeah.
And so we had a couple right before that that gave us some hope. And then we made a whole bunch during that time that some of them did better than others, but some of them did real well. And it made me into a documentary journalist.
Wow. So let's peel back the layers and find out how we got here. But before we do that, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at career day in a school. And one of the kids wants to know what you do
Sure.
for a living. How do you explain it?
Absolutely. I'm basically a modern day filmmaker. So traditionally, this worked very differently in the past. And you would go to film school and you would do all these things. Now we have YouTube, and we have all this modern technology and equipment that you can buy. So basically, I met somebody who had done all those things in the past. They knew essentially how to do filmmaking. I would imagine a lot of YouTube channels are like this too. And they were teaching me the basics, and I learned kind of as I was going, a crash course in production. And so I would be at first with my partner who does all the editing and post production now, and we lived in the same city, but he moved. So then I had to learn how to use the camera and do my own lighting and do my own sound. And it's a lot easier than it seems. And so when people ask me how did I get into doing this, I just started doing it essentially. And that's what I tell people to do is just start making stuff. And then worst case scenario, you can put it on YouTube. They take almost everything. If you're able to kind of find the rules and regulations on other streaming platforms like Amazon and various places, you can make your projects to fit their rules, and you can submit them even as an individual to a lot of those places too. If you can't submit it as an individual, you submit it to a distributor. And so now I'm this documentary journalist. I just think up ideas of topics that I want to do, and I go and I interview people, and I shoot all these interviews. My co-producer edits them together. They put in the B-roll, and we have a movie. And that's basically what I do.
So, what did you want to be when you were a kid? What was your dream gig?
Well, I mean, I always wanted to be an actor.
Yeah.
I would watch all these different movies, and there would be these action heroes and, cartoons and what have you. And it always seemed like being the hero was the big thing that I wanted to be. And as I grew up and learned that I wasn't going to be a pro wrestler, I was like probably too little to do something like that. And there's so many things. Acting seemed like there was just a huge barrier between me being able to do that or going on an audition. Like, I didn't know, I'm a kid. Unless your parents are really helping you a lot at that young age, it's pretty difficult to figure out back then. Maybe now you can do it. But yeah, I just basically wanted to be the hero and be a cool guy. I was like a nerd growing up, so I wanted to be accepted by all the popular kids. And and just be one of those leading characters that you see in all these different projects.
So what were the movies? What were the directors? What were the moving pictures growing up that were burned in your brain that inspired
Sure.
you?
Of course, Star Wars was a big one.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up with that. But I mean, I grew up with E.T. and I grew up with G.I. Joe and Transformers and all these other things. Like it was the glory days of science fiction and animation and all those things that we were so lucky to be a part of. And I remember loving Arnold Schwarzenegger and all the Terminator and Commando and Total Recall, all these movies that he was doing, and Jean-Claude Van Damme and Sylvester Stallone. I mean, you could just kind of pin me up as a typical '80s kid.
Yeah. So what was the first thing that you produced on your own that you got a really good visceral reaction and you felt like you found your vocation? You felt like
So
filmmaking.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I had a little bit of taste of this kind of stuff even as a young person. Because I was little, I had red hair and blue eyes, and the teachers wanted me to be in their school plays and stuff like that. And they would give me kind of leading roles in some of those situations, and I was into it, and I did those things. And so I was in the school plays. We won the lip sync contest one year, and I got that feeling of what it's like to be on stage and have a crowd like cheer for you, right? And I played sports. You know, there were tastes of all this kind of attention that seemed like it was very addictive for me as a kid. And it's kind of strange because I'm also very introverted and I didn't like attention. And if people tried to talk to me when I was very young, I would cry. So it was a transition to where I was getting this thing, and then sometimes I'd be in front of crowds. And in the cannabis world, that's where I really developed my identity, because we were in this unique place where I was doing these unique things and winning awards in that sense too, and being on stage and doing these things that resided with the community. So producing, I guess it would be these events that I was producing. We had this one event that was really, really connecting with the community because they were feeling like the biggest event wasn't representing the actual culture. It'd be similar to kind of what the Oscars get sometimes, where I remember a few years ago, the movie Dune got beat out by a movie. I can't even remember the name of it, and everybody was deaf. And there was an argument that, was this the greatest production in filmmaking, the best picture of the year? Was it really? And I think there's a lot of things that the culture feels like the people who are popular are not a representative of the actual culture. And so that's what we were trying to do. And it connected. We wanted to document this. I hired a company, they were filming it. But actually getting it done was really difficult. And then when we finally did get it done, it wasn't popular. But I made a couple other projects right before we finished the main thing, the event project. And those projects were about cannabis and medical using, cancer, things like this. And so those did okay. And I remember my co-producer kind of explaining to me the reason we did those. It's a lot easier to make a brand new project, do it right, than it is to fix something that you already made and had kind of a lot of problems with. So we made those couple, they did okay. And he came to me and he said, "We don't have to do only cannabis stuff. We can do anything we want. Here's some subjects that do well." And he mentioned a couple. And I remember thinking, I said to him, "What about Bigfoot?" It seemed similar to some of the topics he had mentioned. He said, "Yeah, we could do that." So I went along, and we had an event in my local town. I called them up, and they had a Bigfoot guy and a couple. And so I got their info. I aligned interviews with them. And then I went out, shot those. We put it to two guys and then B-roll. And it was really not a huge production, but it hit, and it was virally popular. And we had hundreds of thousands of views, I think even the first day.
Wow.
And so now that movie's definitely been seen by millions of people. It's on all kinds of different streaming platforms. And that really gave me the ball. the very next movie we made after that was about UFOs. And so it was almost the same thing.
Wow. So who's been your inspirational force? Who has been that hero in your life?
Oh, well, I mean, my dad, to be honest with you, he's a really hard worker. He inspires me to be better. I'm lazy compared to him. And so he really inspires me. And of course, there are people who have had success that you look up to. Documentary wise, there's Werner Herzog, and then I guess there's everybody else. And then there's people in the UFO world that inspire me, like James Fox and Jeremy Corbell, and there's many people
Yeah.
in the world that are kind of in this transitional phase where they are making documentaries that seem accomplishable to the average person, so to speak.
So if you could sit down with any filmmaker alive on the planet right now and have a lunch, spend some time with them, someone that might help you in the work you're doing, who would that be?
Steven Spielberg. There's one guy, and especially for me right now in the UFO world. I mean, he's about to break the glass, and everybody's like, is this disclosure for real? Is this disclosure the movie? And I'm excited. I'm gonna go see it. Some people say he has inside information. He denies that he does. But as far as filmmaking is concerned, you know, he was hated on the set of Jaws. There's many stories about him facing adversity and overcoming it. And I think that that would be a really inspirational person to talk to, even though I make documentaries and he makes narratives.
From what I understand, he went on the Universal lot and got a nameplate and put it on a desk and acted like he worked there and kind of got grandfathered into the system, which doesn't surprise me at all. But that movie that's coming out, the weathercaster, the gal in there, I can't remember who it is. She's in Kansas City. It's based in Kansas City. So we've got kind of a narrative. And I will tell you, in regards to UFO activity, there's a little town south of here called Belton, and it is a hotbed of sightings all the time. And people around the world are very cognizant that there's a lot going on. So yeah,
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
wild. I know there's hotbeds here and there, but that's definitely one of them. So it's interesting. Um,
Yeah. Me, as a filmmaker, I'm always looking for those places and I'm always looking for new stories.
well, that's what I was going to ask too. In this country right now, there's so much going on. Like it's that Bob Dylan moment. There's those levels of strife where creators can step up and really capitalize on it. How much of all of the stress and the woe that we're going through, especially in this last year as a country?
How do I put it? When I'm trying to think of a movie that I want to make, part of that is what's going to be popular with
Yeah.
the public, what's going to make money. And so a lot of those topics end up being what's current in the news, what's getting people excited right now. And right now it seems to be politics and conspiracies. And a lot of these things could make good movies. I frequently will find a topic that's important to me, and then I'll make a movie about it, and I'll work really hard on it, and then it doesn't get views, not enough to make it worthwhile. And so that is really frustrating. I want to do stories that I find really compelling and important that aren't, sensationalized, but sometimes you've got to go for what the public wants. And so when I work really hard on an important topic like diet and nutrition or mindfulness or whatever it is, and then it doesn't hit that well, that doesn't give me a lot of inspiration to make more projects like that. Whereas I'll make something kind of dumb. Maybe the production sucks on it. It was really easy to make. It's one guy or something like that. And I'm breaking all the rules of filmmaking. And that movie does really well. And so there is kind of this underlying sentiment that what I should be doing is making those kind of movies and just pumping out a ton of easily made trash. And that's how I'll make the most money. And that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
I prefer when the algorithms were human beings and you could just kind of find out what they wanted and then maybe try to make something like that. Now we have no idea why some of these things are popular. The streaming platforms have no idea why some of these things are popular. And they're giving you all these data points where it can sometimes be counterproductive, where you're like, oh, they all have to be this short. And then you make them that short and you don't get the success. And you're like, well, maybe I should have made it longer. Or maybe, I don't know what to do. And it's a really, as great of a world as it is for filmmakers, it's also a really tough world.
So I'm curious, you touched on AI a little bit. There's a fear in Hollywood because there's these actors and actresses that are AI generated. But it seems to me in your realm of doing, reporting and documentary filmmaking that I don't see that AI would be a detractor. I think it would enhance your level of research and being able to go out there. Is that accurate?
So for now, absolutely, we use AI as a tool rather than a replacement worker, essentially. And it's very good for a lot of the things that we are using it for, especially like making our B-roll and things like that. I think it could really help us as filmmakers. The big fear, though, is that they won't need even streaming platforms in the future. Why do you need Netflix when you could just go to an AI and say, I want to watch a movie kind of like The Godfather, but make it about drug smuggling. And then I want to be the star. And then I want my co-actor to be like Angelina Jolie, but not exactly her, just like somebody that's kind of like her. And then make me this movie. And then every day you don't even need to scroll through anything. You just tell the AI what you want to watch. And if you're watching it for 5 minutes, you're like, I don't like this. Make me a new one. Here's what I want. Da 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 da. And music can be this way too. Why do we need Spotify when I could just go to an AI and say, play me this music, make it sound a little bit like that thing that I like, and um, there's things that are getting. I mean, the line between news and what's fake is getting blurred really brutally right now, and I want all AI content to be demonetized, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I totally get it. So let me ask you this. What is it that gets you up every day to do this work? To not only be curious enough to do something that's hard, making films is hard at the end of the day. There's so many marionette strings that need to be pulled on, distribution, everything that goes into it. But to also remain hopeful too, because your spirit has to soar to make work that's going to move people. How do you combine all that to have that energy every day?
Well, I guess a lot of it is the identity that you have. And there's some of that is your own personal identity of what you think about yourself, and then what you're receiving from other people when you are engaging with them in whatever ways that is, if you're on the internet or if you're in person or what have you. And the more you can kind of have those things aligned, I think that's a good thing. Frequently, I will feel a different way than I receive, right? So, like, I'll maybe do a podcast and I'll think, oh, that wasn't so good. And then somebody will tell me, oh, you were great on that podcast. And I'm like, oh, wow, I feel so much better about that thing that I did now. Um, we are all telling us our own story about who we are. And to me, I am this person, but to everyone else that I know, a different me lives inside their head. And that is whoever they think that I am. And so I could kind of give them an illusion of who I am. And if I'm getting a lot of benefit from that, maybe I feel good about that. But if somebody is paying a lot of attention to something that I don't think is a real assessment of myself, I often correct them. I'll often tell them about my failures so that they're not getting this kind of confused version of who I actually am. And that helps me to feel good about who I am. So I think there's a few things that you got to take into account. Are you moving in a direction that you think is progressive and positive for your life? Um, have you forgiven yourself if you're not doing those things or for whatever errors you've made? What can you be grateful about in life? And between those two things, there's a lot of nuances, but if you're really able to kind of keep those sentiments moving and like feel emotionally connected to the things that you're grateful for, but also forgiveness for the things that you've messed up, that's how progress happens, and you just got to keep moving forward. And I think you can't take things too seriously either. So, you know, if somebody says something negative about you, it's not unhealthy to consider those things and if they're true. But I think also you can just ignore a lot of those things. There's always going to be somebody who has a problem or is trying to bring you down.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 18-year-old version of you, and you walk into a room and there is a film projector, and you click play, and it's a 60-second highlight reel of your life so far. Would that young version of you believe that it turned out this way?
No, definitely not. The young version of me, I mean, wow. It's so hard to say because I was ambitious,
Yeah.
but I was also self-conscious. And so there have been times where I doubted myself, and there have been times where I had higher aspirations than what I've achieved. So, um, I'd like to think that I would be pleasantly surprised and maybe inspired to keep going.
Yeah. So let's say you walked into a room of everybody that knows you as the filmmaker, the business side of it. Um, and you could go up to a podium and tell them one fun story about you. Maybe the first concert you went to, a seminal experience of growth, just a fun story that would humanize you a little bit as the man behind the stories and the films. What story would you tell that room of people?
I have so many stories. A lot of the ones that people like are from my days in the cannabis industry. So I used to tell those stories, but a lot of them are real negative, and it makes me feel kind of bad to tell them. So I wrote them all in a book. I have a book called Jack Moves, a memoir of the weed trade and dangerous living, I believe is the actual title. And so if you want to know all my scary, exciting stories, that's the best place to go for them. In the filmmaking world, ah, what stories do I have? Well, I mean, I guess I could tell you a little story about one of my films that I'm working on. Um, I am working on a movie about the Raelians, and they're like a UFO cult.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing this interview with the guy, and he's telling me about uh, clones, and they've allegedly cloned a human being, right? And so I say to him, well, like, tell me about this story. And he's like, well, it wasn't the Raelians. It was this one person that happens to be a Raelian, and she did this thing. So kind of separating himself from the actual thing. And then he goes on to explain, well, when Dolly the sheep got shown to the public, they didn't do it when she was just a baby and they had just done the experiment. They kind of made sure it went well. And, he was qualifying this. And as he was telling me this story, I realized, you know, I say to him, it sounds like what you're telling me is that there's a human clone walking around right now. And he says to me, more than one. And, for me, the reason I do all of these things, I am a truth seeker.
Yeah.
I don't know if I felt that moment where he told me that and I believed him. And, he explained scientifically how this works. And other people don't believe him. And when I talk to people about Bigfoot, a lot of people don't believe that. And I don't know if I believe that. And when I talk to people about UFOs, there's that. And even diet and nutrition, they didn't all agree with what you should do as the, routine for your health to have the optimum health for all, we're all different. There's different answers for all kinds of things. And I'm making these things because I get to talk to these experts, and I am getting my adult education. I can ask them questions, I learn, and I'm trying to expose this truth for other people too, because I think we all have been misled. We've all felt naive, and we all want to know the truth. And so this is the purpose for everything that I do.
So at the end of the day, Jeremy, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone you work with, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, wow. My perception of me. Well, I mean, if I'm being honest, there's a little bit of me that thinks I am like a superstar that has not been given the proper exposure. And when I meet all these famous guys and I'm with, whoever, I feel just like them. And there's part of me that feels like I should be like them. And then there's a part of me that says, you haven't done the thing that's going to make you one of those people yet. And so to me, I've lived many lives. I'm this misunderstood person, the hero of the journey. I've faced adversity all throughout my life. I was the nerdy kid, and it wasn't cool to be the nerdy kid back when I was. And now the world we live in loves all this nerdy culture and all the things that I grew up with. And I feel like I'm on the way to get to where I was going. I'm almost at that spotlight where I will have the freedom to maybe do some of these projects that I always thought were important. And now they'll get the exposure because I'm able to achieve the thing. And so there's just a big part of me that feels like um, misunderstood, but an underdog and an outlaw.
I love it. So if anybody wants to get the book, delve into your world, theskyisland.com, is that the best place to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Theskyland.com. It has my filmography, has the first chapter of my book on there. I also produce an event called the American Autoflower Cup, and I'm always looking for new projects. So hit me up on my website. You should be able to get links to everything there, at least my social medias, where you can see pretty much everything I'm working on. And you can contact me there.
Wonderful. I will put all these links in the show notes. What a joy, man. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything. It's fascinating.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. And I like to say, I think that it's mentally healthy for people to do things like this podcast. You get to talk about yourself and share all these things about your life. And when you walk away, you might have a lot more gratitude for who you are.
It's